But just another development that we want to focus on right now is that the National Super Alliance will this week move to court to seek the prosecution of top election officials who it accuses of bungling the August 8th presidential poll. NASA lawyers are in the process of furnishing the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions with materials seeking to show how top IEBC managers messed up with the election, which was nullified by the Supreme Court. The officials NASA once prosecuted include the Chief Executive Officer, Ezra Chiloba, his deputy, Nyabuto Sungura, Elections Director Immaculate Kasait, ICT Head James Mohati, and Head of Legal Services Perxidis Torore. I want to bring in right now Paul Mwangi, who's the head of the NASA legal team. Paul, thank you very much for joining us on News Center. So let's put this into context. You want to seek the prosecution of Ezra Chiloba. First of all, what are you basing your evidence on?
One of the major things that we have against Chiloba is that he personally frustrated the process of the obedience of the court order. The court said that gave a list of things that needed to be done, especially in regard to the audit of the ICT system.
Right.
And by the time the trial was finishing, they had deliberately frustrated it to the point that we have a case now of total disobedience of a court order.
All right. And so exactly where will you be basing the evidence from? Do you have evidence really also to support further this prosecution that you're seeking against Chiloba?
Well, for Chiloba, we are taking this case to the Supreme Court. We have then other list of persons whose names we shall be furnishing on the DPP, together with what we believe is the prima facie evidence of their criminal conduct. And we are listing all of them, what we believe they did wrong, and how that constitutes an offense under the law. You know, now election officials have to take personal criminal responsibility for the things that they do wrong. And we are saying that unless you address that impunity, it will be impossible in Kenya to ever have a free and fair election until you bring people to book for the mistakes they make.
All right. Let's talk about maybe the ideal situation, because we're waiting for the full Supreme Court ruling to really understand exactly what the judges had against this particular election and IEBC and the way it conducted itself. Don't you think it's putting the cart before the donkey when you go to court right now, before we even get to understand really the issues, the fundamental issues, in detail by the Supreme Court?
No, this move is regardless of what the Supreme Court might say about the election. If you fill out a fraudulent form that the Supreme Court might not capture, or is very unlikely to capture that in its judgment, because the Supreme Court will not be dealing with every Form 34B or Form 34A that was fraudulently filled. Now, that is evidence that we have in our possession, and so long as the evidence shows that there is a criminal offense committed, then it is for the DPP to have it investigated. And that is quite beside the overall judgment that the Supreme Court may have or will have about how the election generally was conducted.
Finally, we also understand that you also are seeking the prosecution of 1,000 other election officials who, NASA is accusing of bungling the August 8th election. Who exactly are this 1,000 other people?
We will be providing a list. For instance, if you saw the memo that Chebukati gave to Chiloba, there are 538 election officials who refused to submit their results. That is an offense. We have many forms that were fraudulently filled out, and that is an offense. So we have people who were managing elections, yet they are not election officials. Those are also offenses, and that is what we want dealt with. The third issue that we are also pursuing is the issue against the French company, Safran Mofo.
Right.
And unfortunately, what the Communications Commission had told IEBC is that they should not take the server system, the cloud, outside the jurisdiction of the country. Because when a situation like we are in arises, the Kenyan courts have no jurisdiction over the company for what it could be doing in France. So we want to work with some organizations to take up the case to France and file complaints before French magistrates. to have the company investigated for their role in bungling up this election.
All right. Finally, also, maybe just before I let you go, you say that you want the prosecution of Ezra Chiloba, but also Wafula Chebukati really is a man at the helm of the commission. Don't you find any faults that, some of the things that even he mentioned in that particular letter to Chiloba, maybe he was at guilt?
No, once an order is served on an organization, the person who is supposed to ensure compliance with that order is the chief executive. That is very clear in the law. It's very clear in the Contempt of Court Act. And when an organization does not obey a court order, the person who is summoned to answer for that disobedience is the CEO. And if he did not ensure that the organization or went out of his way to frustrate the obedience of that order by the organization, he is personally criminally responsible for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Lawyer Paul Mwangi. They are speaking to us. He is the head of the NASA legal team. Remember that NASA is expected to move to court to seek the prosecution of Ezra Chiloba, who's the CEO of the IEBC, together with a number of other commissioners and other election officials, over 1,000 of them, who, of course, NASA says bungled the August 8th presidential election.